people that I'm sure will trickle in throughout the next hour. So my name is Kelly Hickman, and I'm an alumna of Seattle University School of Theology and Ministry. And on behalf of Seattle University, I want to welcome you. This is the 10th annual Search for Meaning Festival. Woo! 10 years! And I actually, when I worked at the School of Theology and Ministry, I helped with the 3rd annual, I suppose, whatever was 2011. So this is, in some parts, my baby. And this community festival is dedicated to exploring the human quest for meaning and the characteristics of an ethical and well-lived life. So thank you for your interest, and thank you for your presence with us today. We're very grateful to our special author, Dra Gabriella Gutie, for the generosity of her time and for her important voice in the search for meaning. This time it's my pleasure to introduce her to you. Dra Gabriella Gutie Muhs is the author of several books which she has placed up here for your perusal, including being the first editor of the revolutionary Presumed Incompetent, the Intersections of Race and Class for Women in Academia. Dr. Gutie Muhs has authored multiple articles, poetry collections, encyclopedia entries, and in 2015 was awarded the Provost's inaugural award for scholarship, research, and creativity here at Seattle University. Dr. Gutie Muhs was also selected university-wide as the director for the Center for the Study of Justice in Society, and in 2017 she published the Runaway poems with Finishing Line Press. So the title of our presentation today, this morning, is Poetic Subjectivity. And Dr. Gutie Muhs will take us through a poetic journey of her published poetry, including her forthcoming collection, How Many Indians Can We Be?, which was begun on the plane to India in 2011, where she represented American poets at the Nagpur International Poetry Festival, and the unique poems from Sustainable Humanity, where she raises issues about equity and social class, beauty, and indigeneity in our 21st century. So please join me in helping to welcome Dr. Gutie.
Thank you so much for being here. Can you hear me? Oh, wonderful. I kind of need this a little bit raised. I'm going to say a few words about my craft first, and then I'm going to go into the poetry. But I also would love to have a conversation with you, because I know each one of you is here for a different reason. And so I want to, if I can answer anything, but I'll read for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and then hopefully we can have a conversation. And please interrupt me, please ask, please raise your hand. I'm a teacher before anything, right? Thank you. In Spanish, craft and art are synonymous. Is it perhaps because handcrafted art pieces, artesanías, are as respected as mental metaphors that do provoke the artist to work and think? I believe writing is an art as well as an artesanía, a craft. And a craft is also something that you do on a regular basis, and that varies depending on your feeling on that day. I write every day, whether at red lights, while walking, while cooking, while eating, I write. I also rewrite. I believe that poems have a childhood and adolescence in an adult life. And if they are good, they are one of the few things that has an eternal life. So I help my poems transition into adolescence and adulthood, extending their lives by editing and rethinking how to say words, because words are like relatives. We love them many times and cannot stand them sometimes. As poets, we bring out in the poems poetry-loving relatives. The characteristics we can read again and again while bringing out the best of ourselves. Poetry was also the path that led me to fully immerse myself in English. It was through the eyes of the legendary poet, essayist, and feminist Adrienne Rich, and through the eyes of poetry, that I learned to love English. But that love affair came much later in life. The gateway to other people's lives for me was not English, but poetry. Because of poetry, I became in English. And I just want to read you, these are some excerpts from my memoir actually, but I want to read you just a few sentences. I thought that it would be appropriate today to talk about God's skin. Because I'm a Chicana, because I write about indigeneity, and I'll read a couple of poems about that are named in the names of indigenous, the pantheon of indigenous goddesses is enormous. But I wanted to say these words to you today, because I know many of you here are lovers of God and givers of life. For the Aztecs, paper was God's skin. They believed it to be something so magical and beautiful. It allowed you to inscribe thoughts, preserve feelings, give inspiration, plan for the future, freeze knowledge, remember the past, that it could be no less than the skin of the Creator. You have immersed yourselves in paper, caressed it, slept on it, learned from it, have written on it, and have grown and evolved through the paper your senses have consumed during your entire life. May our words be His tattoos. Every time I get on a plane, I write a poem. I want to share that with you, and I hope you practice it as well. It's a very enriching and spiritual act for me. And I wanted to read today a series of some of the How Many Indians Can We Be? Flight poems are interspersed here, but I wanted to just begin with that. The first one is a poem I started when I got on the plane to India. It's Lufthansa Flight 756. I'm an explorer, and my instrument, a book, my tool, a pen. I will unfortunately not know how many pirates were on board with me on Lufthansa Flight 756, but I am a pirate going to steal knowledge from other Indians. I'm on a quest for observations that are distant from my own, for ways of not owning pain so close, for challenges to the elusive recreation. A quest. Across the almost all ocean map, the dot on the screen travels to find where the name India, so spelled across geography, comes from. The second poem, Yucatan, or I Don't Understand You. And of course, Yucatan is the first place, supposedly, that the conquistadores arrived. I'm on a quest for a currency of culture I have never spent. Like Columbus, I have not yet gotten there. And like him, I will not give up the quest. I will also never find Las Indias. I will yet again name places and people incorrectly, hopefully knowing there is yet another name I do not know. It is a moment of truth. I'm suspended on this plane in the condition of colonized and not yet colonizer of another culture. I'm on the road of the poem I lost on board La Niña, La Pinta, La Santa Maria, the ships have a place on my left ear drum. They play the same historical note of erroneous thoughts, melodies invented by the culturally deaf of long ago. Might the drumming stop, the historical footnotes run out of the sack? The commotion of excitement palpitates over the Atlantic Ocean. Have we reached Reykjavik yet? This is called tame tongues. What we share in common amongst the seas of languages that detonate difficulty on the plane, culturally, is that we are mestizos. We're all tamed by the language we work in. 1 billion Indians and 50 million Latinos with a dilemma of what step to take first in saying, I've come to learn the English of evolved colonization, the effects of, I don't want to pressurize you, ma'am, much little. The word is a cut on the flesh of language, the background noise of adversity, the buzzing of the bees of precedence. The tracks of colonization have reached domains unexpected. And this is a poem I wrote thinking about masculinities. So every day in Nagpur, my host, the wonderful mother of one of our professors, we would take a taxi to where she lived. And every evening we would run into the same cow. There was a cow that would come and approach the taxi every evening. The first time it scared me, the big eye next to me. But there was also, we also got to see these men, most of them working class men, most of them men who had probably worked in construction all day, and they were wearing their lungi, it's like a skirt that they're wearing. But I almost felt like I was watching my husband with our dog. Like he was caressing the dog. I hope I'm not embarrassing you. And these men were caressing their friends. And they were touching their friends so intimately. And they were giving love. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're really at a loss here. So I wrote this poem, Manhood. Manhood exhibited on the street, men buying tasmak, that's liquor. Drinking, holding hands tenderly in a tic-tac-toe of life. With their friends in a square in lungi, touching different parts of the loved friend's body to not lose contact with their hearts. Squalid dogs and holy cows watching envious from the road, except the astounded dog who could no longer walk. Passerby tourists watching envious from the cars. Intimacy, a difficult product to export. Feminine manhood not yet patented by the West, outside of stadiums. My eyes skip the beat. My humanity is in diapers in India, where people understand that to let you live is already an advantage. This is called Barefoot. It's a love poem to India. In one continent, shoes represent dirt, in another, privilege. I will walk on a barefoot vegetarian road for the pleasure of seeing your soul, India. I will dress up in everyday saris, my soul of huipiles, for you, India. I will hail the problematic soul of Octavio Paz and adore the loving face of Francisco Alarcón, because they extended their arm to you and yours long before it was vogue. In this case, I will take off my shoes. It makes perfect sense that one would be asked to take a bath before visiting the temple Tirupati. One should shed the dirt of the soul through a cleansed body where one could see one's dirt disappear. Their saint that only comes to hills, Balaji, will be able to touch our cleanliness. I will alter my life with images of roads, houses, three-legged dogs, cows, rice fields. The imaginary of my soul will again open doors. This is also another fun quote. You can laugh. I wrote this poem and I have to tell the story. So this is, I tell my students, this is a perfect example of a cultural faux pas, right? I go to India and I went like I go to Latin America and, all over the United States, and I buy my salmon boxes at Bartels, right? That I'm going to gift people. I buy the jam and the honey from the Northwest, and I feel like I'm such a good person, right? So cultured. I arrived in India. The first thing that happened is that they wanted me at customs to open all my boxes of salmon. And I had a bag that was almost like an army bag. I had stuffed the boxes of salmon in there. And the guy said, "We are going to open them." And I said, "No, you're not." And I basically sat on it. I said, "These are my gifts. You're not going to open them. Call someone else," right? I sat there for an hour on my bag. It was really very difficult. I was, trying to make sure they didn't take it from me. My $200 worth of salmon. And then it occurred to me, oh, I have the program for the International Poetry Festival at Macor. I can show it to them, right? I can tell them that these are gifts I'm taking and that they have to not open my boxes of salmon because they will not be any good anymore. And so I did that. And when I showed them the program, they brought me tea and cakes. And they let me through. And I love to tell that story because it's the value of a poet in other places, right? So I was so joyous with my gifts, and I arrived in the south, right, in Chennai, after Mumbai and Nagpur, with my friend whom I adore, her mother. And her mother is really short, lives in a beautiful retired people community. And every day my bag would be a little bit closer to the balcony. Right? She had asked me what was in it, and I told her. And so then I found out how totally irrelevant and inappropriate my gifts were, because most of the people down there were not only vegetarian but vegan. And my little boxes were sarcophagus, right? They were little tombs of fish. And so I wrote this poem in a place where most people were vegetarians and vegans. The dead. In my stomach, like virtual crosses, lie the hundreds of entombed chickens, dozens of cows, hundreds of pigs, in the shape of sausages, in carnitas, meatloaf, a ham, 2,000 beef patties, 2 baby lechones, jamón serrano, a pigeon, an iguana, a snake, one side of deer. and even hundreds of chapulines. That's grasshoppers. I consumed before Mary's little lamb, humiles, are dipped ants, chocolate dipped ants. Lapin au pruneau, canard à l'ange. They are the sacrificial lamb of the conquest, my scarlet letter. These two are also part of the runaway poems. I wrote the runaway poems. They have 4 books sale of mine, a couple of literary criticism books, and they have runaway poems. I wrote it when our son ran away when he was 13. And everyone I told that to, I was still processing that, said to me, "Oh, our nephew ran away. Oh, my neighbor ran away." It was a little bit like miscarriages and abortions. Everybody had one, but nobody talked about it. And so this is why I wrote and wanted to put out the runaway poems, because I wanted not only to talk about my son, but to talk about all these kids that run away, what happens to them, and also the different versions, the different reasons why people run away and what they're looking for. And so I'll read you just a couple of poems from the runaway poems. And I do want to read you the one about the flight. This is the walkabout. And if you have questions afterwards, I would be happy to take them, because I think there's several things that, names that I mentioned that people might not know. Walkabout. Chamomile did not make you whole as I suspected, my son. It did not cure the ache of immigration. Your grandfather's native ache, your great-great-grandfather's European ache. You still had to go on your urban walkabout, my growth. No, the chamomile, peppermint, mango, guava, cloves, and cinnamon tea I transfused into you did not put you at ease. The novena I prayed for your restless nightmares didn't calm you. The herbs, the prayers, the happy colors of your room, the blessing of the curandero at the Zocalo last year did not cure you. The sweeping by the old Zapotec woman didn't feed you, my son. The picture of you, my friend, she's sitting back there, took to the Virgin's Villa, my dear, did nothing for you. Your nostalgia was knee-high deep, my love. Our cutting of your hair did not purify you. The toxins of your culture were far gone. They have become part of your active blood. Wishilopochtli, my son, my pieces have become whole in your presence again. I, Coatlicue, have collected, resculpted, redesigned my heart into your head. Oh, my child God. And this is Sierra. And it's actually true. Everything about this poem is true. Sierra. No, you are not a tree or a mountainous drawing. Sierra Maderos, a female from Oregon. You appear on USA Today, August 21st to 23rd, 2009. Smilingly, I carry your newspaper face in my purse. Know your date of birth, October 25th, 1993. Your biracial description by heart. Know that your brown eyes, Know that in your brown eyes someone found a way to convince you on June 24, 2007, St. John's Day, that you were better off away from home, or took you, or killed you, or you escaped for whatever reason, and now you are another missing 1-800, the lost child in the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's archive. You thicken the tree of the Sierra of loss. Your face represents danger, tenderness, love, sadness, compassion, and anger, all tightly wound around the word missing. A forest of feelings lined up like toothpicks in the lives of those who have lost sierras, those who clamor for sustainability. And I think I'll read you my dog poem because that always makes everybody happy. The Hard Love of a Dog. As a result of reading this at Open Books a couple of weeks ago, I started another poetry manuscript. The first part, I don't remember the full name, but the first part is Dogmatics. Because nobody, in all my readings I've had, everywhere, nowhere have people have come and told me they loved a poem more than this one. But what they loved was their dog, right? So I have, and I said, oh, well, I have a collection of about 8 poems, 10, to my dog, so, why not? Why not? The Hard Love of a Dog. Because he lived in the street, he knows how to ask for meanings without words, how to nurse milk out of concrete, water out of wood, how to play with the same love differently, how to sniff out the unbearable endings, chewing to think. An empty bowl speaks for your needs, chewing the thing that most threatens your survival, starving to understand from within the acute sentiment of life. The lickings of love unlimited, the layered significance of bone-gnawing, endless communications of sighs and whimpers, all signed by your saliva. And I want to read a couple of poems. Time's running out, but I want to read a couple of my poems from my new collection. But I will read you Flight 491 before I do that. That's Lufthansa from Frankfurt to Madrid. In the air, I have no relatives, culture, problems, or future. I rest. I cannot hate or love. I'm perfect, whole. One suitcase and a bag, a passport, computer, and phone, an agenda and a soul full of hope. No way to touch or be touched. The freedom of innocence and inconsequence. On this plane, there are no fences or choices of permanence. On this plane, choices are few, rare, counted, peanuts or pretzels, maybe a bun. On the air, a bird am I, inside another man-made dream in the air. On the plane, I rest from housework chores, emails, and promises. Forget we are wearing down with every nocturnal gaze. With every day on earth, we grow a new tree ring. With every passing ship, cloud or pool below. On the plane, we rule over a world of movement, only birds away. to read you one more from Indians. And do you have questions, comments, please? Conversation we were going to have? No? You just want me to keep reading?
Maybe if you at some point maybe talk a little bit about your own writing practice. You know, you say you write every day, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
What was the question?
Her writing practice. She says she writes every day. I'd like to hear more about that.
You know, I once saw Gutie Emecheta, African writer, and this is at a time when everybody was talking about Virginia Woolf and A Room of One's Own. And Gutie Emecheta had 5 children. She's an author that went from Nigeria to England to actually support her husband into getting his BA. And then he left, and she was there with 5 children. And she's a novelist, very successful now. But she said something I love when people asked her, how can you write? You have 5 children, you live in this very small flat, you know. She said, my children are my muse. And I think that we have very unidimensional ways of looking at the world and at writing. And we need to go beyond that. We need to open up that floodgate and shift those paradigms and say, okay, I'm here and I have paper. If I have paper, I'm happy. I always have a piece of paper and at least 1 or 2. I don't tell anybody, but I take pens. I don't want to, but if I see a pen, I have this anguish of, that I'm not going to have a pen. I'm not going to have a pen to write, so I do. But if I have a pen and paper, I don't need my phone. I need a pen and paper. And I'm so happy. But we've been told, I think that this is the business, there's a business in poets and writers, there's a business in all of this persona that they've created for us, that we're supposed to exemplify writers that go on retreats, right? And have, 7 days. I don't want to be away from my children and my husband for 7 days. No, thank you very much. I would rather go and have coffee with my friends. I will write a poem afterwards. But I think we need to shift what we've been given. And I write, I just make sure that I write. Before I go to bed, I make sure that I write something. Because I know I'm privileged. I have paper and I have pencil. And I have a mind and I've had an incredible education. And so how can I not write? That is a question for me. But I think we've been fed a lot of there's a way to write. I think everybody's a writer. I think everybody's a poet. I think everybody can sing. I think everybody can do all that we've been told we can't. So I just make sure, even if I have to go to bed at 12 or 1, the day I don't write, I don't feel it was a day worth living. So I just need to. When I was little, it was, and I want to find the shoes piece. Maybe I'll close with that one. When I was little, my mother would get so mad at me because we were migrant farm workers, and we didn't get new shoes. I don't think I ever had a pair of new shoes when I was a little girl. But you pass down your shoes, right, to your cousins, to your friends, to your neighbors, to other kids in the migrant camp. You didn't just buy shoes for you. You bought shoes and you bought clothes that you knew 10 other people were going to wear. And that's how it was. She would get so mad at me because I would write on the insole of the shoe. Right? And then, of course, nobody wanted my shoes. Yeah.
I just want to tell you, Gabriella, that I too take pens because I'm a writer also. And I just have this feeling, it's kind of a mystical feeling that all pens in the world belong to me. and that's true. And then I leave some to others.
It's true, Sharon.
Wow.
And I want to Sonia Rodriguez, who's also presenting this afternoon. My friend Connie Anthony, who's also a writer, a poet, a political scientist. And also Sharon is presenting this afternoon poetry, her wonderful book. What's the name of it?
Strange with age.
Strange with Age, by aging. So please go to their events. But I agree, it's like, I don't feel like it's stealing, it's like, I need that pen. I try to take the cheap ones, I try not to, I'll never take like a real nice one, but that's how it is. Do you have questions from what I've said? I really want a conversation instead of me just reading to you. But, yeah.
So, Gabriella, I think some of us are sitting here listening to what you're presenting and thinking that for me, the spirit of my writing doesn't live, kind of at that level every day. So I want to go back to something that you said earlier, which I think is a very freeing thing if you are writing, and that is with poems. I think this is true with anything you write, that you have to take children into adolescence, into adulthood. And could you talk about that just a little bit more? Because I think when people are writing, sometimes they don't realize that your first efforts, which might be at the level of a song or, you've just had coffee with a friend, but that might not be your final, what you finally share.
Yeah, because I think we also have a very hierarchical writing in general. Most communities are patriarchal and hierarchical. And we are made to believe, when I tell my students, every one of my students, all of you, here's my books, and all of you can write and publish a book. And they're like, no, Dr. G, no, we can't, I say, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because that's not the narrative that's given to them. They're given a narrative of there's only these holy cows, these 3 people who can write, and they're the only ones that can talk about writing and present, and they're the only ones smart enough to put, a book out. And that's the narrative, even at their generation, which is amazing to me. But going back to what you were saying, there's some pieces that come out whole. And I know you have some pieces that come out whole too. But in general, yes, it's work. It's work. In general, yes, you take them from being children, but sometimes children say some very deep things, right? Sometimes you don't want to get rid of that thought. And I think that's what it takes. It's just practice. I don't want to change this because this is profound, right? Even if it's, Sherry Moraga, who's a major Chicana writer, incredible think tank. She always talks about how people criticized her writing because they said her words were so simple, right? And why was she writing in these simple words? She said, well, I was characterizing a certain population, a certain community, and that's how they spoke, and that's what I wanted to. But instead, she was criticized as a writer for being simple, right? And so I think that it's very important to not throw away the baby with the bathwater, because there's some incredible thoughts there, and of course we need to develop them. We need to read to others. I also find it very interesting about how secretive people are about writing. That they will not show it's like, why not? If this person copies you, they're going to have a different version anyway. It's not going to be your stuff. It's going to be something totally different. Let them copy you, right? Give it to them.
The fear is that you're being humiliated. It's not, I think, that you're
Yes. I know.
Okay.
That's another fear, right? Yeah.
I'm interested in your choice of title, Poetic Subjectivities. Could you speak to that for a moment?
Yes. Well, you need to read Presumed Incompetent first. But as a woman in academia, as a person who comes from the working class,
And there's a wonderful chapter in Presumed Incompetent by Connie Anthony, political scientist Connie Anthony, about this. It's like there's many of our subjectivities that are layered that are not respected. And I became a literary critic. And I became a literary critic of Latino. I write books about authors that are just as good as Sandra Cisneros, but nobody writes about them. In fact, some of them are better and deeper, like Elena Maria Viramontes. And what happens is that we tend to tokenize everybody. We tend to tokenize people. So I became a literary critic because when I started reading Latino Chicano literature, I did not find in the literature the people that I knew. The people from my community, the men cooking on Sunday, barbecuing so their wives wouldn't have to, so they could sit down and talk to their comadres. Those were not in the literature, they still are not. And so this poetic subjectivity is just my job in the world. I feel both as a literary critic, as a writer, as a, all the things that I do have to do with expanding those subjectivities. The issue with immigration right now, the way the president can refer to Mexican people, right? These things are so ignorant, and yet we allow them to happen. We allow them to exist. When I don't even want to say his name, but the Orange Man, he said horrendous things about Latinos, Chicanos, and I expected that there would be a mass demonstration the next day, that people would be out in the streets. I expected all my friends to be out in the streets and say, no, you cannot talk about these people that take care of our children, that clean our hotel rooms, that give us a middle-class life. You cannot talk about them and their children like that. But they didn't. So I think, that shows me that there's still an incredible ignorance about other people, especially people of color in this country. And we cannot forget, I am all for Black Lives Matter, but we need to look at all the communities, and we need to see that that man that you think has nothing to offer is ignorant and has a second grade education, can teach you something. So it's about expanding subjectivities, my own included. When I first started working here, there's people who've never talked to me or asked me what I do. I'm a full professor. I give talks internationally. I went to Spain in the spring to open up the wing for Estudios Hispano-Estadounidenses, U.S. Latino Studies. But most of my colleagues have never asked me, what do you do when you go to these places? On the contrary, they've criticized me, my mode of presentation. Do you like my presentation? So we still have all that internalized oppression that, we carry over to other people. Unfortunately so. And we need to go beyond that, and we, all of us, in search for meaning. I tell my students, it's not my job anymore. You are the ones that are going to make sure there's equity, make sure that everybody is respected, because you can never respect anybody too much. You can never respect anybody too much. Right? I'll read a couple more poems that I have in this other book. No questions? Nothing? No?
I have a question.
Yes.
As a poet, I always feel there's an interior way of looking at the world, interior, that comes from experience, that comes from a deep knowledge of self, and a deep knowledge of beauty, sensitivity, and it's like almost getting rid of self to be able to look at others but yet knowing I don't know, that's where good, really good, that takes you with it, writing comes from. And that's really a whole birthing. It's a birthing and a death at the same time of many things. It is. And you have done that. And you are beautiful.
True enough, that's true.
You're beautiful because you have done that, and that is a lot of hard work.
I love Luz Villanueva's poem where she really talks about precisely what you're saying. That basically we all birth our own selves. And a lot of people never get to it. They don't let that process happen, right? I want to also let you know that I wrote the introduction to Killing Marias. And this is a book, if they don't have it for sale, I have a few copies. And Claudia Castro Luna, who's our poet laureate for the state of Washington, she wrote the poems. She came to me with a collection and I wrote the introduction, which it's really giving voice to the women of Juarez, the hundreds and hundreds. I thought it was 600, I just read recently that it's more like 800 women who were killed and sacrificed and tortured, and nobody, neither government, did anything about it. So this is a wonderful collection. I want to read a couple, I have till 9, right? Yes, thank you. What?
You're 10 more minutes.
10 minutes.
I know. Our time is just so fast. I have to read you Windows, because Windows, is there any teachers here? Yes, yes. I love teachers. I so love them that I married one. And the world is a safe place, I learned in the 3rd grade. The world is not a safe place, I learned in an inner city school in Chicago, where Miss Carr, my indomitable teacher, told me that I was not mousy or poor because she had grown up poorer than I, and with more brothers and sisters. She said, "You are as strong as I am," and I believed her. While we read Julius Caesar with an African-American accent. The world is an accordion, full of endless adventures, Mr. Sullivan said as he came over to our dilapidated migrant camp to fill out FAFSA paperwork with my mom, who fed him everything she knew how to make unforgettable, while he, blushing and flustered with a chile colorado, drank milk full of adventure, he said, and I believed. They were my windows, never broken, never, never, never concealed, camouflaged or muffled. Windows speak with one gaze, like teachers. And this is the poem I wanted to close with. I have several. I've started a collection, Meeting Words, KNEA, Meeting Words, and it's really about the border and about the porosity of the border. Because my family has been coming back and forth, since it was Mexico. And they've never wanted, many of my cousins and uncles, they didn't want to be residents. They didn't want, they came, they worked, they left, right? So this porosity, and I have 2 other poems that I don't have time to read today, but one is Cars, in which I, through all the different cars, well, not all of them, about 12 of them, that my family owned when I was growing up. I tell the story on both sides of the border, right? Through all the different places we lived in, I tell the story. And this is the section about shoes. And so I'll close with this. So I'm talking about shoes here and shoes there. because I want to show that we are so very close to each other, that we are here, that Mexico is the United States and the United States is Mexico, that we cannot be untangled. Should we count and measure love in shoes? One at a time. Leather huaraches is what my mother wore the first 30 years of her life. And at 92, she told me not to tell anyone. We all come barefoot first, patas de perro. Some of us born with our feet. The first pair of shoes I remember were the choclos, Catholic school uniform shoes. I was to put cardboard in the toe hole every morning when I walked to first grade, knowing my mother could not know about this. Eres una lumbre, you're fire, she would say, in fear that before she could once again buy me shoes, I had a hole in my step, through which I believed a piece of me was leaving, like a sand clock or a salt shaker. At Lee's shoes, we dreamt the Chinese merchant, our hero in Watsonville. On Union Street, he had shoes of all prices for those immigrant moms. My mom knew I could be strong and she could save $1. Paired shoes of same design, different sizes, were sold for 99 cents. My sister would get the $2.99 privilege of same size shoe pairing. The next year, my mother found zapatos de fierro, iron shoes, for me. It was her dream. Her eyes gleamed at the Goodwill table. I would win the 3:30 at McQueedy School in tap dancing shoes, because I was Mr. Diaz's dream of an athlete, and he encouraged me to run in my zapatos de fierro, as my mother had ordered, and I won. While my classmates rolled in laughter, I won a blue ribbon with gold letters I still possess. I won my body, the same one that propelled me out of the door when Felipe the rapist's neighbor tried to take off my clothes in his living room. I won. I beat him. Shoes are called chanclas, zapatos, barcos, choclos, tenis, huaraches, sandalias, tacones, zapatillas, botas, calzado. And they take our brains into their hands. They are the mattresses of our souls. I wanted to show you that one of my students, talking about the creative process. So one of my students gave me this. She said this was me. Because I wear a wheat bead, I wear a Mexican dress a lot of the time. But she didn't know my story. And I love this because this shoe is bigger than this one. Right? She didn't know. But this is what brought this piece to life. Because I remembered something I have not remembered in 40 years. So, you're here, and I hope something that I said will bring some shoes to you. And that's why this is so important, to share, to give, to show other people parts of our soul so that they can run with it and weave their own tongues. If you get the books or if you want to talk here for you.